Hello and welcome. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Hard, who is Head of Medical at Portsmouth Football Club. Steve, how are you doing?
Hi, Andy. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
No problem, no problem. Yeah, we were just talking about the weather, which is not something we often do, but how is it on the south coast today?
It's very nice today. I would have tried to have done this in my garden, but I think the glare wouldn't allow me. Yeah, I'm inside for a little bit.
Yeah, we can do an in-person one sometimes, and hopefully
Yeah.
we get the same sort of weather there then. So yeah, no, thanks for joining. So I'm looking forward to hear more about you, your background, and so on. So how have you ended up where you are? We'll sort of dig into it a little bit more rather than just a broad question like that. But where are you from originally?
So I'm originally from Devon. So my voice probably doesn't sound like it, but I'm from a very small town called Totnes. So I was born there, lived there for 22 years, and went from a small town of 5,000 to London. So it was quite a stark contrast, which no one in my family could understand. But small town, felt claustrophobic, needed to get out. So yeah, I was in the big city and I never went back.
So what prompted the move to London?
When I finished school with very little, so I think I had English, maths, economics, and metalwork. So my careers tutor said, become an engineer. I was like, I don't want to be an engineer. So I went to a college in Torquay, did a crash course GCSE, so did all the sciences, PE, chemistry, biology, all that stuff. Passed them, then did my A levels. And then I took a couple of years out. So I was just doing little jobs here, working on the beaches, managing arcade, amusement arcade, first aid attendant, did some security work. And one day I was at work and I was like, you know what, this ain't for me. So I just went into the manager's office, sat there for about an hour on the phone doing clearing and got a place on a course. And literally the next week I was gone. It was just as quick as that. So the only people that knew I was going to uni was my mum and dad. Didn't tell any of my mates, didn't tell anyone, just disappeared. And that was it. That was back in 1997 now.
Right. So what that was physio, was it then?
No, the course, I actually got on a sports science course at University of North London. And I applied for a few physio courses and couldn't get on. So I wanted to do sports therapy. And there just wasn't any on the clearing. And the sports therapy degree started the year before in 1996 by Graham Smith at University of North London, which is now London Met. So this is before the Emirates was built. And I went up there, enrolled, and I found out when the first sports therapy class was. And I just sat in the class. And Graham comes in. And if you ever met Graham, he's quite an intimidating character. And he comes in and he does the who's there to register, and he's like, excuse me, but you're not on the register, who are you? And I said I want to do it. He said, right, if you pass this and get an A, then I'll let you on the course. So I just grafted, got an A, and that was it. He put me on the course and never looked back.
Right. So you'd gone there with the thought of doing sports science, but you're just like, actually, I'm just going to do it
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
into the thing. Yeah, Graham is. I've seen Graham. Yeah, I've seen Graham in action. So yeah, I can definitely testify that he's not one you want to cross.
Nah, nah.
So what was that like? So was he one of your tutors there?
Yeah, he was an actual tutor then. So we had Graham Smith, Ian Littlejohn, who's down this way now. So he was at Chichester and Solent Uni, so lives in Salisbury. So I've stayed in touch with him all these years later. Another guy called Steve Smelt, who is Sunderland based. So they were my three tutors. Yeah, brilliant. Great 3 years. Got a work placement in after my second year. So I did 2 weeks at Millwall. They offered me a job after the 2 weeks, but I was literally, well, I've got to finish my degree. I can't just come in. So yeah, I was working part-time there, and then literally as soon as I finished, I was lucky enough to have a job.
That's brilliant then. So just going back to the actual course, like what was it that you were inspired by to want to do sports therapy?
Played football, never professional, got a few injuries, and it's one of those, if I knew then what I know now, I could have carried on playing. Got frustrated with some injuries and just went to the gym. The town I was in, there wasn't a lot to do, so a lot of us went to the gym, but I literally got into like bodybuilding, so I was big, so I couldn't even move around the pitch. And as the story of a lot of physios, we end up doing it because we've been injured and we want to know how to make things better and what we should have done. Love my football, so Looked into the physio side, couldn't get on the courses, didn't have enough UCAS points. Obviously didn't even get onto sports therapy. I got into a sports science course, but managed to get that way. And that was it really. And just did the placement in football at Millwall and never looked back.
And so what was it, do you think, that when you went to Millwall and that they liked about you to offer you a job after, only 2 weeks being there?
I think with any student come in, you've got to be interested in what you do. So not just the football, park that to the side, the actual therapy, physio, sports therapy, show an interest, ask questions, but ask them at the right time. Like, don't ask a silly question in front of a player. I just had good rapport with the physio, Jerry Doherty, I was with at the time. And we're still great mates now. He's godfather to one of my kids. So that was back in '99. So 25 years later, we're still in close contact. So probably Graham and Jerry are the two that I look at who started my career, and I owe them a lot. But yeah, just touching into it, before I went to uni, I wanted to be a Marine, but I had asthma, so I couldn't. That dream was gone. So that's why I worked doing, like, not dead end jobs, and not being offensive to people who do those, but jobs I didn't want to do forever. That's why I did it, just thinking, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? But that town that I'm from, when I speak to my dad, I think pretty much 90% of my friends are still there. Everyone, not many of us moved out, but he still says your mates are moaning about this, that, and I'm like, look, get out, don't moan. If you're not happy with something, you've got to do something about it. So I made the right choice. I go back every now and then. It's a beautiful part of the world, but I couldn't live there full time.
Yeah. So what was it like then when you moved to London?
Took me a month to get used to it, as in just the speed. And I was used to a Monday night in a pub and there's no one in there, but a Monday night in the student union, it was packed. Where I was from, everyone knew everyone. So everyone knew my granddad, everyone knew my dad. So I couldn't do anything without them two finding out. London, you just, that grey man, you just blend in. And that's what I liked. I just get on with my business. And I've always said to people, someone said to me now, right, you've got to move out of Poole. You've got to go to Devon or London, where you're going. My kids are older now, but London all day. I love Devon and I'm proud of where I'm from, but I'm not 80, so I don't want to retire there yet.
I've actually got a trip to Cornwall coming up in later on this year, so it does look very picturesque.
Family's there, so yeah, I know that part of the world very well.
And then, so when how long were you working at Millwall for the duration of your degree?
No, I did my first 2 years on the degree, and then this was just like a placement in the summer. So I did the first 2 weeks of pre-season back in 99, 2000. So I did a few hours during my final year. And then when I graduated in 2000, then I went in like part-time. But part-time in football is like a full-time job, really. I mean, part-time in football, that is your 40 hours. But that's what I was doing. I worked on the doors, so I was doing security work. So at one point, I was doing 6 days a week at Millwall, and I was doing 7 nights a week on the doors, killing me. But when I went to quit, the last two of the managers out at Millwall didn't want me to, because they said you look after the players when they're out, and I was like, for God's sake. But when my wife got pregnant with our first child, I called it a day. And it was heaven, being able to go home and not have to worry about a second job and stuff like that.
So that's an interesting concept. So you're at Millwall, which is like a notoriously, one of the more, let's say, lively teams. So what was that like then? So you're looking after the players, but like, what was it like working for Millwall, and you're also a doorman, bouncer, whatever, security, whatever you want to call it?
Technician, customer control liaison officer. It was two jobs that stark contrast, really. But no, great. It's what I did during uni. It paid my way through uni. You don't have to be a meathead to be a doorman. It's gift of the gab and stuff like that. Just enjoyed being around people. Got paid for being out, basically. But yeah, what you hear about Millwall, I love the club. I really enjoyed my time there. Get a bad press, and I think there's quite a lot of clubs, not just Millwall, that get a bad press. But yeah, great people that work there when I was there. I still think there's a couple there now that are still at the club, and I left there 2006, 18 years ago. But enjoyed it. Yeah, and then see the lads out on a night out was a bit strange. So not everything was reported back, but nah, it was good times. And that's where I met my wife back then as well, working in the pub, and we're still together now after all this time. So if I weren't doing it, I wouldn't have my family now.
Yeah, no, exactly. So how was that then? Then trying to balance the thing of being, the medical team, but then seeing them on a night out and that blur or blend between, how you associate with the players.
Yeah, no, it's you have to have a rapport with them, but I never went out of them as such. So it was, and they'd only be with me briefly because I worked in a pub bar, so they wouldn't be with me for long. But it was good because I used to start the night there. I used to come in, you had built a good rapport with them and stuff like that. But you always knew staff, player, etc. But yeah, it's quite nice. They'd always come in, say hello. They wouldn't come in and just blank you and walk off and go, oh, that's the physio over there or anything like that. He's going to grass on us or anything. But nah, it was good. Enjoyed it. Just glad when it ended. The bouncer side.
Yeah. And so was Theo Pafitis at the club then?
Yeah, Theo was chairman when I first went in. He left in my last season, but then he sort of came back on a consultancy role. But yeah, he would have been the chairman at the time when I was at the club.
And so what was that like? He's a famous businessman, he's well known in the mainstream. Like what did you have much interactions with him?
I didn't personally. Didn't see him much at the training ground. He'd occasionally come down. But when you're at the Den on match day, you would see him about. But it mainly be with the manager and the coaches, and that I wouldn't have much to do with him. The head physio would deal with him, but I kept myself to myself and did my work and just stayed out of that side of it. But no, nice guy, polite, all that, and obviously, I think after he left was all the Dragons Den stuff. So at the time, we knew what he did business wise, but I don't think he was as famous as what he is now when we were there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so were you there? How long were you at Millwall for?
So 7 years. I went 99 on a placement and then joined after uni 2000. I left there 2006.
So you would have, like, Tim Cahill would have been there, and
yeah, Timmy was there. So we had the cup final 2004, Man U, UEFA Cup. So Millwall in Europe. That was an interesting one. So yeah, no, we had some good players: Richard Sadlier, Tim Cahill, Darren Ward, Paul Ifill, Stephen Reed, who's at Forest now as a coach. Yeah, some good players there over the years. Just didn't quite get to the Prem. Missed out in 2002 to Birmingham in the playoffs, last kick of a game. That was an interesting night. I didn't leave the Den till 1 o'clock. There was a little bit of trouble outside the stadium, shall we say.
right.
Surprise with the club. But yeah, no, there were some good times there, to be fair.
Yeah. So that really was a great team, wasn't it then? That was a really strong. Was it Dennis Wise? Was he the manager?
Yeah, Wisey was manager. So I had quite a few managers when I was there, but he was manager. So we had Tony Warner in goal, who's now goalkeeping coach at Reading.
He was at Liverpool, wasn't he, for a bit,
That's
Warner?
right. Yeah, he was at Reading. Sorry, at Liverpool. Trying to remember the team from the cup final: Robbie Ryan, Matty Lawrence, Darren Ward, Sean Dyche. Dyche was a player there. Tim Cahill, Stephen Reed, Paul Ifill, Danny Dicchio, another one there. Scott Dobie, Bob Peters, guy from Belgium who played in Holland. And there's some good players that never really made it, but when you looked at them as kids, there was a young lad called Charlie Hearn he was special. He was a good player, but just I'd never heard what he did in the end. I don't think he made it professionally after his time at Millwall. It's a shame, really. You see all these kids come through. Paul Robinson was another one. I think Alan Dunn. So both of them got testimonials at Millwall, and they were kids when I was there. So I'm showing my age now, but they've done like 10, 15 years. I think Robbo might still be there coaching. So they've all done well for themselves. But yeah, it was a good team. It was a good team. Just didn't quite. I think the cup final killed them because we were doing well in the league, and because they were concentrating on the cup final, the league form dipped and didn't quite make the Premier League. But it would have been interesting to see Millwall back in the Premier League.
Yeah. Well, I'm an Everton fan, so I'm glad that you didn't manage to keep hold of Cahill because he was an absolute legend for Everton.
Yeah, and they've done very well, very well.
So for like these people there, so Stephen Reed, people talking very high esteem about him as a character, and like Tim Cahill again. I know he does a lot of stuff now. Like, can you tell? Is there a different type of personality with these people? Or like when you're speaking to them, can you see if someone you think is maybe going to go on and do more things or different things in the game?
Can with some. I'd probably say you can't with all. I've always thought I'm a good judge of character. Tim was driven from a young age. So he came over to Millwall at 16. I joined the club when he must have been about 19 or 20, but driven. You know, he knew he wanted to play at the top level. Probably knew that wasn't going to be with Millwall, but yeah, and a great lad off the pitch as well. So he, unfortunately for him, he suffered an ACL injury in 2002. So he was out with that. Pleasure to work with, really good. Myself and the head physio worked with him, and he was a joy. Come back really well. Came back for the final 3 games and scored in all 3 games. So that's how determined he was to get back. Reedy, another great lad. He left. I'm trying to think. He went to Blackburn probably 2003, 4. So he was quite young then. Another great lad as well, and you saw potential in him. And again, another driven one. But they were just a good bunch. You know, in football, bad press. But yeah, I work in a dressing room. You will get bad eggs from now and then. But that dressing room, no cliques, real good bunch of lads, worked hard for one another. Yeah, and then there'll be others we can name, but those 2 were really good lads.
How come Cahill? We're getting specific now, but why was Cahill so good in the air?
Just his timing, because he wasn't the tallest. Well, he isn't the tallest. Sorry, Tim must be 5'10", so he's not like a 6-footer. Just his timing, he could hang. He was in the air and just hanging, and you'd just be a ball come in the box, and you'd be looking for your Danny Dickios or your tall guys, and there was Tim, just like Jack in the box, just up hanging, and yeah, unbelievable, really. And yeah, I don't know how many he scored, but I know he scored a few for Everton as well with his head, and yeah, just a reliable player.
Well, I remember he played up front. I think he played up front twice, like against Man City at the Etihad. This is obviously not when they are what they are now, but I think he scored. He scored in both of them, the winner in both of them, like late on. And I was in the Man City end for those ones. But no, I mean, he's just a brilliant character. It's everything that embodies a player that you want to play for your club, isn't it? Because he just got that drive,
Yeah.
determination, just like that will to win. It was like he was like an Evertonian.
Yeah, that's it. He's loved at Millwall. He's loved at Everton. So there's 2 clubs. Sometimes when you leave a club, you might get a few that are a bit annoyed with you, but I couldn't say that about either club. I'm sure if you asked the majority of the fans, they both love him still.
Yeah. And what about Dennis Wise? How was it working with him?
Yeah, so he came in as a player initially. Mark McGee was manager. And then Mark got dismissed and Wisey came in as player manager. He was a character. Yeah, he was. He had his rules. So he'd want the injured him from literally start of the day till 5 at night. It's fine. He got injured once and was a bit annoyed that I kept him in till 5 o'clock. But I said, well, when you're injured, you're a player. So those are the rules. So I got on well with him. With any manager, you have your times where you might have a disagreement. But I got on fine. He was great. Great behind the scenes, like with families and that. So his wife, just involving all like staff's wives on like get-togethers and stuff like that. So it was like a family really. And I think that's quite important in football, that you're there all the time and you don't sort of share it. So I think I'll speak on a lot of the physios. We can't do this without our families. You know, you want to come home and shut off and not talk football, which is hard when you've got an 18-year-old boy that loves football, but that's your work time and it's your home time. But involving the families when you go to work and you're watching the game, they've got people that they know. I think it goes a long way sometimes. It's like a social centre for them. It's not just going and watching a game for 90 minutes and coming home. So we done really well on that front and really well on the pitch. Obviously, we had the cup final, got into Europe, which they haven't done since. But yeah, good guy. I've not spoke to him or seen him for a long, long time. I know he did the jungle thing a few years back, but I'm sure he's doing well now.
Yeah. And then, so where did he go to after Millwall?
So I went to Bournemouth, manager Sean O'Driscoll. I went down there in 2006. So they were League One. First season, but the story was I went down there and spoke to the manager in the March, offered me the job. Can you start tomorrow? I was like, no, I'm at Millwall, got to serve my notice. I don't want to, blah, 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 any bad blood. So I didn't tell my wife. And then I was on a day off and she was pregnant with our 18-year-old. She was pregnant with him. And I said, well, let's go for a drive. We'll go down the south coast, we'll go to Bournemouth. So she was born and bred in Bromley, where Millwall trained. Where's Bournemouth? I was like, oh, for God's sake. We'll just go for a drive. So went down there, beautiful day, like today. Went for a walk along the beach. She goes, oh, it's nice down here. I went, well, good, because I start working in a couple of months. So it was a bit of a softener, and that was it. So when I started, our youngest was 3 weeks old, and I literally came down living in a flat on my own. The plan was to live in the flat for a month or two and find somewhere to live, but they moved down within 2 weeks. It was just too hard for the 3 kids on their own, because they were 3 weeks, 1 and 2 at the time, because we had three children under 3 years. So they moved down when he was 5 weeks old. Living in a 2-bed flat with 3 kids, it was quite congested, but never looked back. It was just moved on from there. And you might mention it a bit with Bournemouth. Obviously, when I joined, I never expected or realised what would happen a few years down the line, being in the Premier League.
Yeah. So before we go into the football side of it then, so what was it like then for your family having to move and for you having to cope with all of that?
Tough for them. And then if I look back at it now, you think, what the hell was I doing? Because I wanted that main role, that be the head physio and have my own department and build it up. Well, department, it was only me in it. But my wife's family all lived close proximity. So her sister lived literally next door. We rented a house next door to her sister. And mum and dad lived like 10 minutes away. So you think babysitters, people to come down and help, especially when I'm not around. Just before, it was a few months before I went to Bournemouth, we bought a flat in Maidstone because we couldn't afford Bromley. So we were like half hour away. So she was literally on her own. So imagine this, 3 kids is hard, but when you're on your own, it was in a flat, so 4th floor, no lifts. So trying to get back from a shopping trip, which would normally take you 2 minutes to walk up the stairs, could take 32 minutes with the kids. But then when she came down, I was working 6-7 days a week. I was never there. I was never at home. So she would come in the afternoon, literally with the kids, and just, I would say, look, go off for an hour. So I would have 2 of the kids running around the treatment room and 1 in the baby seat, while she just gets some fresh air and talk to adults and stuff like that. So it was tough. It was tough. Reap the rewards now. But yeah, it's would I do the same? I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
We'll never know. So then for Bournemouth, then what state was the club in when you went there?
They'd sold the stadium a few years before, so they were renting the stadium, and I still think they rent the stadium now, to be fair. So it wasn't in a great position, but no one knew the full extent of it. I remember being there for a couple of months and we got called in saying, you're not going to get all your wages this month. And I spoke to the manager, said, what's going on? You never told me this. So there were times when payment was late. And then, so I joined in June 2006. The club went into admin in February 2008. So literally 18 months later. So we had the 10 points docked, and that's what made us get relegated that season. So no, wasn't good times. And then it turned out when they went into admin and you basically get all your people put in what they're owed. So what they thought was a couple million ended up being 6 million. So it was like bloody hell. So there were tough times at that moment.
And so from your perspective at that point, was there any thoughts of, what am I doing here? Have I got a role? What do I do? I'm going to get paid regularly.
Yeah, no, there was a time I was going to speak to another team and I was literally on the brink of leaving, and I called the then chairman, and it was a guy called Jeff Mostyn, great guy, and he ended up paying our wages sometimes out of his own pocket, all the staff and that. And I called him in, I said, look, I think I'm going to go. I've got the opportunity to go somewhere. And he was like, just go, like, don't serve your time, just get out of here, it's fine. Within the next few days, something massive happened in my personal life and I couldn't leave. So I remember going back to him, feeling embarrassed, went back. I said, you know, that conversation, I said, I can't leave. And he was like, what conversation? So I owe a lot to that guy as well. But still, when you were there, you're thinking, shit, you know, not getting paid. I was defaulting my mortgage, you know, pausing payments. So this is back in 2008. So when we had recession back then, Northern Rock, we were in trouble. So guess what? My mortgage was of Northern Rock. Had this personal thing going on, admin. It was like anything else want to happen. But that's something I tell to people, like, when you're down, there's people in far worse position. Yeah, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's just a figure of speech, but you'll find a way. If you're determined enough, you'll find a way. And it was just keep your head down, keep professional hat on, do your job, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. It does sound like there's a lot of things going on there. So, and then in terms of on the pitch and so on, then, so what league was that in?
So we were League One my first year, and then the second year when we went into administration, we got docked 10 points. So we got relegated in the last game of the season at Carlisle, of all places, the furthest place to go. So we needed a point to stay. No, we needed to win to stay up. Carlisle needed to win to go up. It was 1-1 in the end. So we went down and they were in the playoffs. We had no assets. We didn't own a stadium. I think the only asset we had was Sam Vokes, who we sold to Wolves for back then like 300,000. So in today's terms, not much, and that never covered the debts. So that was it. It was literally just selling things off at the stadium. The club shop got shut down, and bailiffs were always in. So we was in League Two. And then the next year we started on minus 17 points. Us and Rotherham and Luton started on minus 30. So you look now, Luton and Bournemouth both in the Prem. So Luton had to have championship form to stay up. So Luton went down. We stayed up on the last home game of the season. So the promotement game against Grimsby. Yeah, if you talk about games, you always think about cup finals, but that game will probably be one that always sticks in your memory because we knew if we'd lost and we go down, I think that was the club. I don't think liquidation, that was the club done, ended. There would have been nothing. We were literally told before the game, if we don't win, not sure if you'll be in Monday. So talk about putting pressure on lads before a game. Went 1-0 down, but we come back and won the game 2-1. They made a film about it. So that was when Eddie Howe came in. He came in at Christmas, and I think it was on minus 7 or something. And the rest is history. So stayed up. Next season got promoted. I think we used to spend 2 years in each division, and then we're just up. So got promoted from League Two in 2009, and then we was in the Prem in 2015. So 6 years we was up top of it, and it was
mental.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
So what were your emotions then like when you're going into that game? So was it at Grimsby or was it at home?
No, I was at Bournemouth. So it was our last home game. Yeah, just shitting yourself, crapping yourself on the bench, like, because you got no control when they're on there. So when you go 1-0 down, you're just like, oh, for God's sake. I'm not a very emotional guy, but when we got the win, I was crying my eyes out. I think everyone was. It was just, it still gets you now talking. It was just an amazing day, really. And yeah, then what do we do? The next week we won. So in the end, it's one of those, you look at the table, we ended up staying up by about 5 points because the other team below us lost. I think it was Chester in Grimsby or someone went down. And you look at now, we're a Chester and we're a Bournemouth. So, you know, you're both playing one, you're both tight, and then that's football. But yeah, emotional time, a lot of pressure, different sort of pressure to what they've got now, being in the Prem. But yeah, the start of the day I've had better days. The end of the day might not have had better days.
Yeah, I like that. So, like for the players then, because I guess there's not a big medical team at that point.
But no, when I joined the club, there was a manager, assistant manager, kit man, and me, and we had a part-time scout. That was it. So I was doing warm-ups. You're trying to do the gym stuff, trying to help with nutrition. So you're here, there, everywhere. You're putting out fires. You can never really put into place stuff. So it was over the years. I think we was in League Two, League One. It was like, if the club never get to the Premier League, just if we can build a department that is try and get to that standard. So obviously we get to the Premier League. So obviously when I started, that was a level of staff, and the day I left Bournemouth, there was a full-time doctor, 5 physios, including myself, all sports therapists. We had 2 sports therapists and 3 physios. I had 3 masseurs. I had a chiropractor to come in 3 sessions a week. You'd have your sports science team of 5. You'd have all your analysts. So the team grew from 4 to 54, and it's the same at any club now. So the infrastructure at all clubs, and even clubs in League Two, have got a good infrastructure behind them. You know, look at teams like Wrexham and that. So yeah, that's a massive change for me in football now. You've got a lot more people. You can offer better service to players, more one-to-one. Things you think you can do, you can actually do. You've got the time to do it now. So yeah, very tough at the start. Great learning curve, working on your own, having to manage all that time. Because I've worked in clinic, and in clinic you've got your diary, you've got this one-to-one for half hour, 45 minutes, however long the session is. But football, you've got all the lads coming in before training, then you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 injured, however many you've got at the time, and you have to delegate and spend time on one, put one in the gym, and it is a great way of organising yourself. So when you've got more staff, it's like, all right, it's not too bad now. You go and do that, you do that, so you can delegate. But I always still wanted to keep my hands on when I was running the department. I wasn't one to sit in the office and just point a finger and foreman go and do that. But I think in the early days when there's not much staff, you're managing the players. Then when you build a big team of staff, you're managing staff. And I'd say sometimes it's just as hard as manage staff as it is players. But yeah, it was a stark contrast from start to finish, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So did you prefer one or the other of like that bit where you're literally one of 4 in the whole team, backroom staff, to being one of 100 and whatever?
I did like the smaller group. You were very close knit, but you just couldn't do everything. You couldn't do exactly what was best for the player. Like I say, sometimes just putting out fires. There wasn't enough hours in the day. So it was good when you had the more staff. Someone asked me the other day about regrets when I left Bournemouth, and funnily enough, one of them was, did I employ too many staff? I sometimes think you can have too many. You get interns in, and sometimes you rely too much on the interns, get lazy, get complacent. So at Portsmouth now, obviously I've not got that level of staff, but it's something I'll bear in mind if we were to ever get up to the Prem again. But no, I enjoyed both sides, but I probably would never go back to a club and be a one-man band again. I'm too old for that now. It's a lot of effort. Great, it's a lot of effort, but I don't think that's the young man's game there. I don't think I could do that again.
And then, so Eddie Howe coming in then. So he's like, I mean, he's a young guy when he came through. So what was that like when he came in?
So he was a player when I first joined the club. So when I joined, he was struggling with a knee injury. And it got to the January of my first season and he couldn't continue. So we saw a specialist and it was agreed that he would retire. I spoke to the manager at the time and I said, look, Ed's struggling. Is there anything you can offer? So we offered him the reserve team manager's job. So he did that. And then the start, when was it? We had the -10. So when we started on the -17 season, Eddie was like reserve team manager, first team coach. The manager got sacked after 4 games. So Eddie got sacked as well. He was gone. Manager came in and his assistant was Jason Tyndall. So JT and Eddie had played together. So JT said, oh, I know Ed, give him a job. So he worked in the Centre of Excellence. We didn't have an academy then. So Ed worked in the Centre of Excellence. that manager that came in with JT, they only lasted 3 months and they were gone. So one of the directors asked Ed if he would be manager. So he returned the favour and said, if I'm manager, I want JT as my assistant, and the rest is history. So I'm not speaking on their behalf, but would they have ever worked together if that hadn't happened in the first place? One went and the other asked to stay. I don't know. So when I joined the club, Jason left. Literally, my first day was his last day as such. He got released. So I didn't work with him, but I knew him through other lads and that. But yeah, what those two have achieved since is very good, very good.
And so with Eddie Howe, like again, you were talking a bit earlier on about being able to judge people's character or what they're like. What was he like? Were you thinking about this person could go on and do something?
When he was a player, that brief spell we had, looked after himself, very meticulous in what he did. And the manager at the time when I first joined the club, Sean O'Driscoll, was very, very meticulous. Organisation on the pitch, the set pieces, everything. So he was Ed's academy coach for a while when he was in the academy. So I saw parts of Sean in Eddie. So when he first took over, this is all new. He's been in the youth team, and now all of a sudden he's manager of a team that are -7 points and need to stay up. So that's a massive job for anyone. So obviously he did that, and he was with us for 2.5 years before we went to Burnley. So I'd say the Eddie that I knew that come in on New Year's Day that time to the one that come back from Burnley was a different guy, as in he'd learned, had time on the job, 2 different clubs. So he was a lot more experienced when he come back, but he did a fantastic job the initial period he was there. But it's the same with anyone. You always think, oh yeah, I knew he'd do it. I don't think I could say that. You know, he was a good coach, watching him with the reserves and with the first team, but just opportunities and chances. And if it didn't work out at Bournemouth and he went, would he be where he is now? You never know, you know. But yeah, what he's achieved is brilliant, unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it really is, and it's good to see him like he's doing a good job up in Newcastle as well. So look, for you as well, when you progress in through the leagues, what's the infrastructure like? How is that managed, like in terms of your budgets and things? Like, I've always found that quite interesting on how medical budgets are allocated.
Sometimes we say budgets, we never really get like a figure. You've got this much to spend this year as such, but it was just when we were going up through the leagues and squads are getting bigger. You're getting more expensive players. And you're getting players on loan from Premier League teams or Championship teams. You just go to the club and look to offer a better service. I could do with someone coming in and helping. So I think I didn't get anyone in to help me full time. I'd have like volunteers and that, but it was until 2011. So I've been there 5 years until I got someone in to work with me full time. And then it wasn't until we got to the Prem, so 2015, I managed to get a third person in. So you were working with like the 2 of us and interns and volunteers and stuff like that, scrimping, saving. In 2011 or 12, we managed to get sports science as well. So that was building as well. But you were talking like 2 in each department, and then it just grew. But yeah, it's just don't ask, don't get. So it was like pretty much, you know, every now and then. With football, when the team's winning, it's always a good time to ask. When the team's losing, you've got a few injuries, not a good time to ask. It's just timing, really. When's the best? It's the same as when you want a night out and you've got to ask the missus. It's always timing and when's the best time to ask. It's pretty much the same as that, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, I always find it interesting because obviously we're dealing with that on a lot of times that people just assume that there's going to be set formats, budgets. But I think even at the biggest clubs, it's not a normal business environment, is it really, a club? Even though it's big business, is it just a completely unique environment?
No, it's the same as anything. Just get all the info, justify why you need it, why you want it, how it'll benefit the team, the squad, the players. But if I'm getting a bit of equipment from yourself, there's no point in me going to the hierarchy and talking all scientific. They want to know money or why will it help. So you just got to put it in layman's terms to them, speak their language as such, in a way that they'll understand. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm in that process now with Portsmouth getting promoted. I came in, I wasn't there at the start of the season, come in, work with what I got, improved a few things, got a few things in, but I want to, step up to the next level now. So I'm in that process now, discussing what can I, what can't I. So yeah, I'll hopefully find out next week.
And then so for like the remainder of your time at Bournemouth, like what you were there for how long?
So 15 years in the end. Yeah, so we had 5 years in the Prem, and then we got relegated during the lockdown. So we had that period when the country went into lockdown, and obviously I think we ended up having 2 or 3 weeks off, and we were back in social distancing. We'd train in groups of 5, run on a pitch with an apron and all that stuff. Looking back at it now, it's bizarre. But yeah, we went down at Everton, actually. We beat you 3-1, but Villa drew West Ham 1-1, and it all went back to the goal at Villa Sheffield United when Hawkeye wasn't turned on and VAR didn't intervene.
Right, yeah.
So we went down by I think it was that point and the 1 goal. So we went down into the champ. Eddie left. Jason took over for the first part of the season, and then we lost in the playoffs to Brentford in the end, who went up, and that was my last game. So yeah, so probably my last season wasn't the most enjoyable. Didn't know what was going to happen, but that's football. Keep your head up, move on, and then just had some time out of football then.
What is it like? I mean, you can be like institutionalized when you've worked somewhere. You've gone through such a huge, amazing period for the club, from like the absolute financial ruin almost through to playing in the Premier League. What's it like when you're leaving that?
It was a shock because I wasn't expecting it. So it was literally the day before pre-season. So I've been used for the last 20 years. July, I always used to say to people, July and December are no-go. It's literally all hands to the deck. This is the busiest period in football with the fixtures and training, etc. So being at home, not having to go to work, it was strange. It did take me a while to get used to it. I think for the first couple of months, I didn't really do much. Traveling, visiting family, stuff like that. Wasn't doing any work as such. And then a friend of mine in Christchurch near here, I went uni with, he's got a clinic, and he just reached out. He said, Steve, you need to do something. He says, just come and work for me for 1 day, just for your HCPC register, to keep your hands on and stuff like that. And that was it. I went working in private clinic. And then before I knew it, I was doing like 4 or 5 days a week. Enjoyed it, missed the football. But then I'd probably say about 5, 6 months in, I didn't. It was like, but then I was sucked back in. I was doing a bit of part-time work here and there with teams, but always said, I don't want to do this full time. Don't want to do it full time. Doing work with the Premier League. So I was doing on the games program, academy tournaments. So we do tournaments on weekends. So you'd be at Loughborough Uni, Nottingham Uni, St George's Park, travelled to Belgium, went to India, went to Mumbai. So that was a great experience. And that's things I probably never would have done if I was still working full time in football. So I did enjoy my time out, not initially, but I did in the end. But it was a shock to the system, that's for sure.
And then, so what prompted you to decide that you would go back into full time?
I got back from India, 2 weeks there, and someone contacted me and said a team in the Prem are looking for a physio. I said, oh, right, that's good to know. He said, well, you're not going to apply? I was like, no. I said, if a team wants me in football, they'll have to contact me now. That's what I'm saying. If no one approaches me, I'm never going to get back in. If someone does, I'll chat. And whether I've got cameras in my house or microphones, I don't know. But literally 2 days later, I got a message from sporting director at Portsmouth saying, hi, I'm Rich Hughes from Port, blah, blah, blah. Would you be willing for a chat 1 day next week? I was like, yeah, sure. So rung me. It was off season, so it was last June. Just saying, oh, just bringing up our physios left. Just wondering if you could do our medicals for us with our new signings. And I was like, you haven't rung me to do your medicals. So he said, look, we'd like to chat to you about coming in, like as a full time. We spoke to a few people, blah, blah, blah. So I said, fine. I said, I'm busy, so you're going to have to come and meet me. So they were literally going to come to my house. So I met him in a pub, the usual thing, like buying a car. Met him in the beer garden, chatting. And I said, there you go, the floor's yours, do a pitch. So spoke about it. What do you think? I said, I need to have a think about it. Fine. Came home and I thought there's no point in asking my son, because you tell him that the football team's in, it wouldn't care who it was, yeah, do it. So spoke to my wife and I was expecting, don't even think about it. Oh, that sounds quite good. You need to follow that up. So I was a bit like, bloody hell. So that was it. Back and forth, chatting for a while. It was probably a good 4 to 6 weeks they were chatting. Just sounded right. Met a lot of the staff, went to the training ground, and yeah, so I joined there end of August last season, and not a bad first season either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what were you looking for when you had that meeting with him in the pub? Like, what were you looking for to hear from him to convince you?
It's quite nice when like you're headhunted or you're approached, the feel of being wanted. Even asking for opinions. It was he was selling it, obviously talking about everything. And obviously, as you do, who have you been speaking to? So he mentioned the people. One of them was someone I went uni with 25 years ago. So it was like, and another one, it's funny that I'd never met him before, but a friend of mine was a friend of his, and it's stuff like that. So there was 2 or 3 people they spoke to. So he spoke well, and then one night I said, look, can I just come over and have a look at the training ground after work? So I got over there 9 o'clock one night. I thought I was going to be meeting the sporting director and I'd just have a little snoop around the training ground. I was greeted by the manager, the CEO, the chief operations officer. But it felt like I was doing the interview and not them. Why do you want me in here? What do you expect from me? Bang, 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 bang. They were just great people, hit it off. And I think that's what's been good this season. Obviously, the players have done it on the pitch, like the backroom staff. I knew a few from Bournemouth. I brought a couple in that I had with me at Bournemouth because, again, it was just me again. And I thought I ain't going down that route. So I had to assemble a team in a short space of time. But everyone will just do anything for everyone. It was a really good setup. And now we're in the champ. Just want to build on that and push on. But yeah, it was just good. They had a dream. They said they were going to get promoted. I don't think they envisioned it being this season, but in the next couple of years they wanted to go up and establish themselves, but they've done it straight away. So the key is to stay up now and just build on that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Your camera's gone off. I don't know if that's anything at your end or not. There we go. It's going back on. There we go. Perfect. So, for like when you say bringing in staff, like what are you looking for in when you're bringing a team in or recruiting someone? Like, what are the characteristics that you're looking for from them?
So when I came in there was no staff. They had a couple of people just filling in. So agency that worked in sport. And when I came in, one of them stayed on, but I wanted like a lieutenant, someone I knew, someone I trusted. Because you're coming into a new squad, a new club, a new squad. It's hard enough on your own, and it's hard working with someone you don't know. So I had to bring in someone that I knew. So I had someone that I was with at Bournemouth who, just before I left, when we got relegated, got pushed into the academy. He wasn't enjoying it. So I brought him over. He was an intern with me many years ago. So I'd known him for like 9 years and stayed in contact with him when I left the club. And so brought him over. So it was great. It was like a new lease of life for him. Another intern I had at Bournemouth who was in sports science happened to be at Portsmouth working in the academy. So I said, promote him to the first team. So I basically, now we've got 2 medical, 2 sports science, and there was a lad that was there before who just did massage, but he's trained in sports therapy. So we're basically training him up. You know, you got your degree, use it. Don't just be a masseur. You can do that, but you've got other strings to your bow. So when we did the final sports science, I didn't want it to be AFC Portsmouth. I wanted it to be, so we interviewed on that side. When I did the interviews, obviously you're asking all your specific questions, but I had the sporting director in with me, and then we invited him in to meet the manager, because he's got to be team fit as well. There's no point in having someone that's brilliant at the job but no personality, just don't fit in with the group of staff or players. So we did that process and got a lad to come down from Leeds United Academy. Been brilliant. So yeah, I'm a bit of a fickle when I look at CVs. Sometimes I might look at the first bit and put it down. If it's too long, not interested. Little things like that. It might be quite anal that way, but that's how I like to do it. And and just involve other people. So I speak to my other staff, other physios. What do you think? And then so I've got a close relationship with the sporting director of football, whatever you want to call him, which is quite good. This is the first time I've had a really strong relationship like that, and it works. And I'm surprised not all clubs have got that. I know they have at the top end, but you've got far more getting it now. And it's just your bridge between yourself and the board. So I work closely with Rich and involved him a hell of a lot with the recruitment of all the staff I brought in. So we've got 4 now. And I haven't asked for more staff yet, but it might be further down the line.
Yeah, get the ultrasound first. So, for like you mentioned, your lad's a massive football fan. Like, he's 18. So, what's his plans now?
So we'll be 18 on Saturday. So Luke he played good level when he was younger. So he was a goalkeeper. Bournemouth wanted him. I remember the goalkeeping coach and Eddie used to be like, "Oh, you got to bring Luke in." I was like, "No. I've seen academies a lot." I said, this was when he was about 10. I said, when he's 15, ask me. Well, Luke hasn't got my height gene, so I'm 6'3". My dad's 6'7", but Luke's 5'9", so he's not the stat. He'd be good in a 5-a-side goal, but not a full-size goal. So he moved to outfield. So I was sort of glad I didn't let him into the academy, because he would have been let go. And I wanted to do it on his own merit and not being the physio's son, getting a place. So he played when he under 18s. He's never played men's football. He's basically gym, college, Xbox, gym, college. He does his own thing now. So, but he loves watching football. But he was just he's never really had a team. Like, he'd follow Bournemouth when I was there. He follows Portsmouth when I was there. He wasn't old enough for Millwall. But he was just a Messi fan. So Messi, Barcelona, that's all he watched. I don't think he watches Inter Miami, to be fair. But yeah, he just loves his football, loves his sport, really. But yeah, great lad. You're always going to say it about your son, but he's a great lad, and he's probably the polar opposite of myself.
Yeah. So, like, what's his? What are your kids planning to do now? Then, like, I know that they're following their dad's footsteps of the medical industry.
Yeah, so my eldest, Olivia, is 20. She'll be 21 September. So she's got a place at Manchester Met. So she was doing her final GCSEs in COVID, so couldn't do them. So went on predicted grades. So she's took a bit of time out, deferred a little bit. So she's going to do biomedical science up in Manchester Met. So she wants to get into medicine, doctor, whatever. So she's got the undergrad, and then she's got the option of doing the masters, so doing 5 years up there in total. My youngest daughter, my middle one, Leela, she wants to be a nurse. So Leela's not as academic as the other two, a lot more practical. So I think she'll do more of the apprentice side of it. So maybe get a job and then day release at college, etc. And then Luke, he did a work placement at me in clinic. So he was torn between physio and sports science. So he did his work placement with me when I was in clinic, and I was trying to explain to him, Luke, this is totally different to football when you used to come in at Bournemouth. So bear that in mind. So he's chose sports science. So he has got a place at 3 unis, Bath, Durham, and St Mary's, dependent on grades. So yeah, he's just going to wait and see what grades he gets and then make the decision. But I've said to him, whichever one you choose, I'm behind you. I think his mum doesn't want him to go Durham because it's the furthest away from us, but that's mums for you. But yeah, all sort of in that health sector. And they've actually said it's because of me, so that's quite nice to hear from your kids, that they're proud. That's how they want to get into it. I might steer them away from football, though. We'll see.
Yeah, good luck with that, being able to do that. So that's interesting for it. Like, they're all good universities that he's looking at going to in that space. But like, what I normally ask, what your advice would be to people looking to get into this industry. But what is your advice to your kids when they're going into any line of work?
It's put all the effort into it, which I know they will. Don't go to, obviously you go to uni to have a good time and that, but you're going there fundamentally to get your degree. So buckle down, do your work, show willingness. When you get your placements, I did at Millwall, be keen. Don't just prop a door up and not be on your phone and not show any interest. You have to be proactive. You have to ask questions. And when with the football side, it's knowing the hours. They're unsociable. So people go, oh, the pay in football's great. Yeah, but you're doing double the hours of anyone else and you haven't got your weekends. But that's our choice. So that's our choice. So I'd just say to him, do what you're enjoying. So if he got a job somewhere and he didn't enjoy it, well, have a look, other avenues somewhere else. You know, there's nothing worse than going to work and not enjoying what you're doing. You're going to have bad days, of course you are. Yeah, with any industry, you have good days, you have bad days, but you want the good days to outweigh the bad days.
Yeah, no, great. No, that's a good note to finish on. But no, look, thanks for your time, Steve. Appreciate it, and good luck in the championship next season.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.